Welcome back to another video. I'm currently in Chobe National Park in Botswana, and for those of you that have subscribed to my channel, you know that the majority of the videos that I actually posted are mainly on landscape photography, but that's not really what I do. It's not the majority of my work. I'm more of a wildlife photographer. So this is going to be one of the first videos I'm actually going to post which is specific to wildlife photography and mainly focused on African wildlife photography. So I'm hopefully going to show you and bring you along on a game drive this morning, and I have to be respectful of the other people in the game drive vehicle, so I won't be doing many pieces to camera, but what I do hope to show you is some of the sightings and also some of the still images that I will get from the morning drive. What I'll also do is I'll put some commentary on there and explain a little bit about how I work when I'm actually in the vehicle with my camera and my equipment. This is actually part one of two videos. The first will be a game drive this morning, and the second will actually be on the Chobe River, which will be on a boat. Chobe National Park is really renowned for the river that passes through it, so it's not a Big 5 game reserve. If you want Big 5 game viewing, it's probably best to go to somewhere like South Africa, Sabi Sands, Madikwe, or even Kruger National Park. Chobe has its own special ecosystem because of the river, so there's a lot of elephants, a lot of buffalo, there's a lot of birding as well, and of course, having the river, it gives you a very unique backdrop, a very unique environment to do your wildlife photography in, and that's really what drew me here to come and visit.
The entrance to the park was just a short drive from the lodge, and once we entered the park, immediately we started to see a lot of the game. On the morning game drive, it was very common to see the elephants moving down to the water. Chobe isn't a Big 5 game reserve, so that meant that there were going to be other species of interest that I was going to be looking at to photograph. And not being a Big 5 game reserve, that means that you start to appreciate a lot of the other species and the smaller things. The park comprises of a loop road that goes parallel to the Chobe River and then inland slightly. I've seen these guys just smash so many things.
Oh yeah, they are very dangerous.
These guys, as I called them on the vehicle, are actually banded mongoose. They're one of the smallest carnivores and something that I really enjoy observing. Seeing a group like this, they were clearly hunting, so I was really pleased to get this shot of one running across the road with its prize in its mouth. A good safari guide will never overlook the birding opportunities when on drive. It's a really important aspect of going on safari. What I was surprised to see was a lot of white-backed vultures in the park. And obviously where there's a river there are birds of prey. And Chobe is renowned for its population of African fish eagles. These are an iconic bird and they are absolutely stunning. Very distinctive and easy to identify. Make for absolutely fantastic photography. Another iconic bird is the lilac-breasted roller, and in fact it is the national bird of Botswana, so it was great to be able to get this portrait shot.
Yeah, I've never seen one of these before.
Oh, the grey-hooded?
Yeah, grey-hooded never. I've seen a brown-hooded. This is new for me.
Grey-hooded, brown-hooded, striped kingfisher and woodland kingfisher.
Woodland I know very well, yeah.
It's fantastic when you get to see a new species, and for me this was completely new. I've seen a lot of kingfishers in Africa and this one was particularly stunning. Having been on safari many times in South Africa, I'm always curious to see the safari etiquette in different parks. This was the first time I was in Botswana, so I was very surprised to see the number of vehicles that descended upon this lion sighting. With Chobe not being a Big 5 game reserve, I can see the attraction to a lion sighting. Everybody wants to see it. The context to this sighting was this was a young male lion shadowing a female and had basically been mating with this female for several days. Mating lions is a spectacle, however it is a waiting game. The female will present herself to the male and the male will decide whether or not to mount on that female, and this can take a long time before the male really makes the decision whether or not to engage with the female. So more often than not, it's a waiting game. The male and the female will be lying flat cat, resting up before any action actually takes place. Our field guide did a fantastic job getting us a position for me to be able to get my lens focused in on the subjects. And all of those vehicles were trying to get a view on the following scene, which may surprise you. But this is actually what was in front of us with a wide angle. You cannot actually visualize the lions because they are flat cat in the grass. So now with this clip you can see that I've zoomed in to where the lion is, well at least the female, and she's very much flat cat. There's no visual there, and there's certainly no angle to get a photograph of this particular sighting. With so many vehicles present, it really was an example of what I call the dark side of going on safari. With no guidelines on how many vehicles should be present at a sighting, it just becomes a free-for-all. I think with many other species this situation would have stressed the animals, but given these were mating lions, they were preoccupied with that specific activity, and it wasn't long before they actually came out onto the road. So with the lions now in full view and on the road, they do actually mate. However, all of the safari vehicles at the sighting have now encircled the two lions. I've included these shots just to show an example of what you'd really expect with lions mating. However, it's very far from being a scene that you'd expect to see in the wilds of Africa, and that was a real pity. You can see the safari vehicles are positioned behind the sighting, and this was the last shot. After the male dismounted, you can see there are at least 3 vehicles there. There were probably 3 or 4 vehicles my side as well. After the first show, some of the vehicles moved away from the sighting, which gave us more space and a better position, but we weren't expecting for the lions to then turn their backs on us. So this was actually a very difficult sighting. I don't regret seeing this sighting given the amount of vehicles. It was still spectacular to watch, and it's really, really humbling to be in the presence of apex predators such as lions. One thing that you learn on safari is that you can't win at every sighting. Sometimes the photographic opportunities are just not there. So you just have to enjoy the sighting and appreciate that you're in a very privileged position to actually witness these animals in their environment. From all of the images I actually got, it was these final images where the lions were flat cat that really did produce, because I had this black and white photo published in Wildcard magazine in South Africa for World Lion Day.
So we're halfway through the morning drive, and we just stopped for coffee at one of the picnic sites here in Chobe. You actually have to stop at the designated sites. So it's been a great drive this morning. We're really lucky because we're actually the only ones in the vehicle, so we've basically been with the guide all morning. Been able to take that time, actually had some great sightings, and yeah, it's great to have a cup of coffee, get some refreshments and stretch the legs. So second half of the drive's coming up, and hopefully we'll see what we can get.
Just after the coffee break, it starts to get a lot warmer, so our guide suggested we go down towards the river and see if there are any animals coming down to drink. Sure enough, once we got down there, we saw a family of elephants which came along the bank and started to drink and play in the water. With elephants coming to a water source, there are some photographic challenges to pay attention to. The first is the direction of light. As you can see, there is a shadow cast directly towards my lens. And the second is that with the light quite high in the sky now, there is a lot of reflection on the water. You could use a circular polarizer on the lens to cut that out. I didn't actually have one with me at the time. And when you have multiple subjects, it's important to make sure that your aperture is at the right setting in order to be able to get all of the elephants in focus. So normally f6.3, f7.1 will do a good job at a long focal distance to get all the elements of the frame in focus. So once the elephants actually took their bath in the river, coming onto the banks, they started to give themselves a mud and sand bath, and it was actually very interesting to watch how the baby elephants were mimicking the behaviour of their mother. And with a group of elephants like this, especially a mixture of sizes with larger and smaller elephants, it can be chaotic and challenging to compose. So you're really trying to get some sense of order within the frame, and using things like the mother's legs as a natural frame can really work well. So as the elephants walked back into the park, our guide actually spotted a black heron right on the banks of the river, and this is something that I've never seen before in Africa. So when the black heron is fishing, what it actually does is it extends both of its wings to form a canopy and puts its head beneath its wings. By that it reduces the reflections and can better observe the prey that it's looking for under the water. I did mention that Chobe is not a Big 5 game reserve, but it did have quite a nice population of Cape buffalo, and there are a number of old Dagoboys, some of the more mature bulls that were there, and you could see them coming down to actually head towards the river and drink. But the challenge with buffalo is they'll rarely pay any attention to you, and so you have to time your shot. You have to wait and observe and try and get to the point where one of the buffalo is actually going to make eye contact with the lens. Giraffe are quite a challenge to photograph because on game drives you're often photographing animals with a long lens, and if you get within proximity of giraffe, it becomes a real challenge on how you're actually going to compose. And just like buffalo, the other challenge is actually getting them to look directly into the lens with some eye contact. What was interesting about this sighting was the giraffes were grazing from the ground, which is not normally the case. So that made it equally challenging to actually time the shot to be able to get the giraffe looking directly at the lens. So thanks for watching this video from Chobe National Park in Botswana. Be sure to check back for the next video, part 2, where I'll be taking you on a boat safari on the River Chobe. And in that video, I'll be sharing with you how to shoot wildlife images from the boat and on the water. If you liked today's video, be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and you can follow me on all the socials to get the latest updates on my photographic adventures.